Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Vedic Astrology Podcast. My name is Fiona Marques. Today is the 14th of February, so it's a time when, whether we like it or not, the subject of love and finding a soulmate comes into our awareness through all of the festivities for Valentine's Day. And how do we look for love in our Vedic Astrology Birth Chart? That is the topic that we are going to explore today. And building on our Valentine's Day theme, let's begin by examining the myth of Kamadeva. And Kamadeva is the god of love and desire in Hinduism. And he shares a lot of features with the Eros or Cupid god that we might be familiar with from Greek Roman mythology, because they're both depicted as being young, handsome men, and they both shoot arrows of love at their targets. Kamadeva's bow is made of sugarcane and his arrows are made of flowers. And sometimes the string of the bow is depicted as being made of bees, whereas we know that Cupid has a bow and arrow that shoots metal or wood arrows. These gods are also both associated with the spring season in the Northern Hemisphere when nature's blossom and romance flourishes. So Kamadeva is associated with Holi, which is celebrated in February or March. This year, I think it's actually March 24. And Cupid obviously is associated with Valentine's Day, which is celebrated on February 14. So they both have that early spring kind of energy. And the story of Kamadeva has a lot that it can share with us. Let's turn our mind back to the episodes that we've already covered in the Vedic Astrology Podcast, where we talked about Shiva and Sati. Sati was Shiva's wife. She was the daughter of Dakshin, and Dakshin was having a big festival party, but he didn't invite Shiva and Sati because he thinks that Shiva is a bit uncouth and not presentable to polite society. So Sati, his daughter and Shiva's wife, takes great offense at this, and she goes to the party and she ends up being so infuriated by her father's insults towards her husband that she bursts into flames. And so to begin this story, we have to remember that Shiva is single at this point. He's devastated at the loss of his wife and he has withdrawn from the world and he is meditating. Meanwhile, the gods are worried about Shiva's isolation because they need him to produce a son to defeat a demon named Darakaraka. And this demon has a boon that he can only be killed by one of Shiva's offspring. And he's wreaking havoc, so the gods are thinking it's time for Shiva to contribute. And they ask Brahma, the creator, for a solution, and he suggests Kamadeva, who is the god of love and desire, to awaken Shiva from his meditation trance and make him fall in love with Parvati. Because Parvati is actually the reincarnation of Sati, and she has deep devotion to Shiva. So this is the plan. We have to know at this point that Kamadeva is maybe a little reluctant to take on the task because he knows that Shiva is very powerful. And he's also happily married to Rati, the goddess of pleasure and beauty, and he doesn't want to risk losing her. But he understands the quest and he takes on this role that the gods have allocated because it's his duty. So he sneaks into the palace where Shiva is meditating, or into the grounds where he's meditated and being guarded. And he creates a spring, a flowing spring of water that distracts all of the guards that are looking after Shiva. And then he sneaks into Shiva's very room as a fragrant spring warm breeze. And once in Shiva's room, he fires his arrow, his love arrow, and sure enough, it distracts Shiva. This flower-tipped arrow hits Shiva's heart and it fills him with desire for Parvati, who is nearby worshipping him. Shiva is furious to have been disturbed from his meditation with such a worldly experience, and he immediately opens his third eye and burns Kamadeva to ashes, just disintegrates with this glance from Shiva. And Rati, who's Kamadeva's wife, is heartbroken and begs Shiva to spare her husband's life. And Shiva apologizes and promises that Kamadeva will be reborn. And Parvati is also saddened by Kamadevi's fate, but she doesn't give up on her love for Shiva, and she does penance to win Shiva's heart. And she performs many difficult tasks. Through all of this penance, what actually happens is she realizes her true self. Through that austerity, she comes to the truth of who she really is. And once she realizes that she is Sati and she is able to operate from that core truth of who she is, of course, instantly Shiva can recognize who she is as well. And they do reconnect, and they have this son. The son is named Kartikeya, and he goes and defeats Darakaraka. So that part of the prophecy is fulfilled. But meanwhile, the ashes of Kamadeva, as Shiva promised, he put them back together. But in the blast of the gaze of Shiva's third eye, Kamadeva's role of desire was dispersed, disembodied all through the universe, and desire flooded through the universe. And when these ashes were put together, it actually ended up creating a demon called Bandasura. And this demon had a boon from Brahma that this demon could take away half the masculinity of anyone who attacked him. Suffice to say, that was enough deterrent that none of the male gods wanted to have any risk of that. And so this demon ruled for 1,000 years and wreaked havoc until finally the supreme goddess, the goddess whose energy is even beyond and above and beyond Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, in the form of Lalita, she brought together an army of female warriors, and they went and confronted this demon Bandasura, and they defeated Bandasura. At that moment, she freed the original Kamadeva from this very strange reconstruction that had happened, and he was now back embodied in his original form, and his devotion was to the goddess. All of that desire and love was to her, and he just wanted to be by her side at all times. And the goddess understood this, and she integrated Kamadeva into herself. And that is how he became part of the goddess, riding in the chariot with Rati, who was her chariot driver, with this all-powerful goddess. So this myth is beautiful on so many levels because it presents for us interesting questions like, originally, when Shiva was interrupted by desire, was it the best thing to annihilate that desire instantly through meditation? And didn't that just disperse this desire and then create this very twisted, kind of disembodied demon level of desire? So it's very interesting about how do we approach our natural desires, and love being one of them. Sometimes we get drawn by love, by lust, by desire. It's very interesting both with Kamadeva and with Cupid, this idea of arrows, that feeling of really falling for someone. Maybe that even feels like it doesn't even come from inside the self. It comes from these arrows. So I think that's really interesting. And I also think that the story is very beautiful for Parvati in realizing her true self, and that it is perhaps when we are very honest with ourselves and maybe even we feel like we've lost everything, that we go deeply into who we truly are, what we're truly worth, and recognize our true value. And from that space, then the partner that we attract is very powerful and very authentic. So I think that's a beautiful twist in this story. I also think the ending where the Supreme Goddess shows us how to re-embody our desires, bring them back into the corporal form so that they're not in our mind and running away with our thoughts, but they belong in the physical body. And then they are integrated into the wholeness of the goddess. So I think she's really showing us a path there, to a tantra path to embody and be complete, be a complete human being. So this is a very beautiful myth that can guide us in our examination of where do you look for love in your Vedic astrology birth chart. And of course, there are many places to look for love in a Vedic astrology birth chart. And that's probably because life is really love, isn't it? The birth chart is just a reflection of life, and there's so much love in being alive. There's the love from the moment that you're born, the love that created your physical form, the love that your parents have for you, the love that you share with your siblings, with your friends, the love that you share with an intimate partner, and the love that you share with your own children, and in fact, the love that you share with your journey and with your experience here on planet Earth. So where to look for love in the Vedic astrology birth chart? There's no shortage of places. But really, when we ask ourselves that question, we're probably thinking about where to look for our partner, where to look for our soulmate, where to look for intimate love, a life partner that I can share my life with. And perhaps the most obvious place to look for that in the birth chart is in relation to the 7th house. So if you get out your birth chart or your client's birth chart and you think about the layout of the chart, we have the 1st house, which is in the whole house, whole sign system of Vedic astrology. The 1st house is the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon. And it is the beginning of the journey, the beginning of the life path and of the body and of the personality. So we ground ourselves in understanding the 1st house. And we are drawn to look at the 7th house for the partner because it is the other side of the ecliptic. It is the other side of the zodiac, 180 degrees away, where we are reflected back. So the ascendant, the number 1, is reflected like a mirror by the 7th house, all the way over there, 180 degrees away. And it's very interesting that all of the Dharma houses, so the 1st house, the 5th house, and the 9th house, all have a mirror that is a Kama house. So the 1st house has the mirror of the 7th house, which is a Kama house. The 5th house has the mirror of the 11th house, another Kama house. And the 9th house has the mirror of the 3rd house. So this is also telling us in that Tantra kind of way that all of our dharmic paths are in relationship with our Kama houses, our Kama path as well. And that it's finding that right balance on that continuum. And your Vedic astrologer can help by looking at the chart to see where on that continuum is a healthy place for the self to be. And some charts are going to be much more towards the dharmic side, and some are going to be much more towards the Kama side, and some are going to be in the middle. And I think the mythology that we shared today shares these beautiful different approaches to how to balance Dharma and Kama. But returning to where to look for love in the Vedic astrology chart, the 7th house, we've just touched on the 7th house of the partner. And the 7th house is going to be ruled by a different planet than the 1st house. So whatever planet rules the 7th house is going to tell us a little bit about our partner. And as we know, planets have different qualities. So it's a good place to look just to get a feel for what the relationship with a partner might be like. And we can do that in many ways, but it could be as simple as looking at whether that planet is a malefic or a benefic. We talk about this a lot in Vedic astrology, that the malefic planets are challenging. They ask us to step up and to grow because they believe in us so much that they ask us to do more than we think we can do. And the benefic planets support us in whatever it is that we want to do. So they are providing those resources or opportunities that come from our own inspiration. They're both helpful. They just got these different approaches. So is the planet that rules the 7th house in your birth chart, is it more challenging and asking you to grow? Or is it more supportive and nurturing and solidifying your base of where you already are? And this might tell you a little bit about the kind of partner that Vedic astrology is suggesting would be natural. We can look at the nature of the planet in so many ways to give us information about the partner. We can look, for example, at the dignity of the planet. And if the planet is exalted, it gives us an idea that this partner might be very naturally and easily strong in their qualities. If the planet is debilitated, this might be someone who's worked quite hard to have that level of those planetary qualities. So it gives us a sense of a feel about that person's relationship to their own strengths. And we could also learn things about the partner just from the qualities of the planet themselves. So if Venus rules that 7th house, we might think that the partner is going to have some harmonious qualities or some beautiful qualities. If Saturn rules that 7th house, we might think that the partner is going to be older or take time to show up. And if that partner is the Sun, we might think that this person is very comfortable leading and being perhaps the center of attention. So each planet has its own qualities, and that will tell us something about where to look for love in our Vedic astrology birth chart. Another very beautiful thing about Vedic astrology using the whole house, whole sign system is that often the 7th Lord will also rule another house. And this can tell us a lot about the kind of partner we might naturally have success with in the 7th house. For each different ascendant, there are different combinations of what the 7th house rules. Let's break that down with, for example, Aries. The 7th house is naturally going to be Libra, which lets us know that for Aries ascendants, Venus rules the 7th house. And also for Aries ascendants, Venus rules the 2nd house. So we know that the 7th Lord, the planet that tells us something about our partner, is also going to tell us something about resources because it rules the 2nd and the 7th. And this is also the case for Libra ascendants. Their 7th Lord is Mars, all the way over there in Aries, and Mars also rules their 2nd house of Scorpio. So for both Aries and Libra ascendants, the 7th Lord is going to be associated with 2nd house issues as well. So there might be around income and money. It might be around resources, responsibility, and it might be around the person's faith and things that they say, things that they consume, and the person's immediate family, the 2nd house, their immediate birth family. So we could say that for Aries and Libra ascendants, there is this match between the partner and the resources. But we notice that for an Aries ascendant, Venus would be holding that combination, whereas for a Libra ascendant, Mars would be holding that combination. So we see that Venus and Mars are naturally quite a passionate combination. So we're expecting that whether it's Aries or Libra, there's going to be that passionate element to it. But we might say that when Mars is ruling the 2nd and the 7th, as it is a malefic and an action-based malefic, it might want to take control. The partner might want to take control of the finances, for example. Whereas for an Aries ascendant, you might say that it's ruled by Venus. So this person might support the person with resources, might be very nurturing and very beautiful. So they rule 2 and 7, but they have slightly different energies about them. And then if we were to think about, for example, our corners of the South Indian chart, we've got Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. These corners in the South Indian chart are owned by Mercury and Jupiter. So all of those 4 corners are owned by Mercury and Jupiter. And it means that if you are a Mercury ascendant, Gemini or Virgo, your 7th lord is always going to be Jupiter. And if you are a Jupiter ascendant, your 7th lord is always going to be Mercury. And they're always going to be angular. They're going to rule another angular house. So either they will rule 4 and 7 or they will rule 7 and 10. The angular houses are the most activated houses in a chart. So we're going to know that for the corners, their partner is going to be activated. We also know that these are 2 benefic planets, right? Jupiter and Mercury, they're both manifesting planets. And they might be activated on angle. They could even rule the 7th and the 10th. So very activated, very manifesting. That gives us a completely different energy than we were talking about with Aries and Libra ascendants. So let's play this out just a little bit longer with Taurus ascendants and Scorpio ascendants. They go back to that Mars-Venus swap. So again, possibly a passionate combination. And in this case, the 7th lord will rule the 12th. So if you're a Taurus ascendant, Scorpio would be your 7th and Aries would be your 12th. And if you're a Scorpio ascendant, Taurus would be your 7th and Libra would be your 12th. So for Scorpio and Taurus ascendants, the combination of 7-12, the 12th house is expenses. It's where the energy is flowing out. It's where we release things. It's also where we contemplate and where we meditate, where we go on retreat and where we are in institutions and where we have secrets sometimes in the 12th house. So this creates a partner that perhaps could be secretive, but also perhaps could be very spiritual and could encourage us towards moksha, towards meditation or towards our retreats in Bali or wherever we'd like to go on our yoga retreats. So again, we feel that different energy. And then if we go to the sides, the middle sides of the South Indian chart, we have Saturn ruling the 2 middle houses on that left side of the South Indian chart. We have the sun and the moon ruling the right side of the middle squares. So this throws up for us instantly that for Saturn ascendants, their 7th lord is going to be either the sun or the moon. And this can be quite confronting for Saturn ascendant, right? Because Saturn ascendant is much more aware of its flaws, maybe, than any other ascendant. And its partner is going to be a luminary, either the sun or the moon. So it sets up that challenge that they may attract a very great or popular partner. And so how does Saturn feel comfortable with that? And of course, the other way around, that for Leo ascendant, Aquarius would be the 7th house. So how does the Leo energy that's maybe very comfortable being in spotlight, how does that go with attracting a partner who maybe prefers to be in the background? Vedic astrology has some very beautiful puzzle pieces just on the layout of the South Indian chart. And it also brings to mind, especially when we talk about the sun and the moon, they only rule 1 house each. And when we only rule 1 house, we know that it's very important to look at who that planet is with in the birth chart, because that's going to be quite influential. So this opens up another chapter on how to find love in the Vedic Astrology Birth Chart, which is to look at 2 things. Where does the 7th lord go in the chart and who is it with? So both of these questions help us to understand a little bit more about the energy of this 7th lord that we're looking for. For example, if the 7th lord is in the 3rd house of courage and adventure, we might find that the partner that we're looking for is adventurous It's maybe someone who travels or someone who has hobbies, perhaps outdoor hobbies, that we might meet in that kind of setting. Maybe we meet them in a bushwalking club or we meet them rock climbing or something. Whereas if that seventh lord is with the fifth lord or is in the fifth house, it's very graceful placement because the fifth house is a trinal house. It relates to creativity. It relates to play, romance, and it relates to children. So we might find that partner who's delighted by children, who's very playful, who has a sense of grace about them, and so on. Whatever planet it's associated with or whichever house it's gone into, some of that flavor is going to be added to the partner that we're looking for. So we're beginning to get that richness and complexity because, of course, the planets that it's with could be several, and that planet may rule several houses. So imagine your seventh lord in the chart is with two other planets, and those two other planets also rule two other houses. So by this stage, you're getting a seventh lord who rules two houses with two other planets that also rule two houses in perhaps another house that we haven't accounted for yet. So then this person has a lot of indicators, a lot of variability that is just the way life is, isn't it? When we look back on all of the girlfriends and all of the boyfriends that we have been involved with, we may find that there's a lot of variety in that they're very different from each other. We might find that they're very the same as each other. Of course, it's important to also think about when the seventh lord is in the first house or when the first lord is in the seventh house, because that's going to really tie our sense of self with a partner, whichever way around that goes. Especially the first lord going into the seventh house is going to make that life path direction is going to be set towards wanting to engage in partnership. So these are some of the ways that we can look for where is the love in our Vedic astrology birth chart. But it's not just about the seventh lord, because there are other ways that we can look. And I'm going to just talk briefly about a couple of others, but these are by no means the end of the list of where to look for the partner in Vedic astrology. But one would be to look at Jaimini Karakas, and these relate to giving the planets a role of a person in our birth chart, and it's based on the degrees that the planet is at in the birth chart. So this is one of the things that changes the most if you look at sidereal or tropical, because the degrees will definitely change. Often the house lords don't change very much because the relationship stays the same of where the planets are, regardless of whether you use one iron umpshur or another. The planets themselves remain in the same relationship, distance to each other. But with sidereal and tropical, you will get different Jaimini Karakas generally. And we think about the Darakaraka, the partner, as being the planet that has the lowest number of degrees, so that whatever planet is at the start of the whichever sign, any sign. So this Darakaraka may give us information about the partner that we're looking for. And just like the seventh lord, it will be a particular planet. And then we'll be looking for those qualities. And we'll be watching what sign that Darakaraka is in and what natural signs that it rules. So that'll tell us something about the kind of partner that we're looking for. So now when you're looking for your partner, you might have all of those seventh house indications, including what it rules, where it's placed, and who it's with. And now you can also add on the Darakaraka, what it rules and where it's placed, how it's interacting with other Jaimini Karakas, including the Atmakaraka to represent the self. And it's not just that either, because we can also look at the generic Karakas for husbands and wives. So if you're looking for a wife, Venus can help us say something about that. And if you're looking for a husband, Jupiter can help us. So how is Venus doing in the chart? And how is Jupiter doing? And just like we did right back at the beginning, what is the dignity of these two planets, or the one that you're interested in? This will tell us a little bit about wives or husbands. and where is it placed and what is it going through in its place in the birth chart. So you can see that there are many places to look for the partner in the Vedic Astrology Birth Chart. And I think that this reflects that we are all very complex, our individual selves, and of course the partners that we look for. And in some ways, this is only more and more true the older and older we get, because then the partners that we're looking for have even more life experience than our original high school boyfriends and girlfriends. So just like we're all complex and our partners are all complex, but all human beings are just made of DNA. And when you boil down the DNA, it's fundamentally very simple elements. There's some carbon, some nitrogen, some phosphorus, and all of this variety is made. And it's a bit like that, isn't it, with these indicators for the seventh, for the partner that we're looking for. That we're taking very simple things. What's the seventh lord? What's the Darakaraka? What's the generic Karaka? But when we mix them together, it can create an enormous amount of variety. And thinking about those fundamental Karakas, just Jupiter and Venus, bring to our awareness that the Vedic Astrology Birth Chart can also tell us about our obstacles to love. While the chart is full of love, like every house is our loving relationship with our immediate family, with ourselves, with our friends, with our practices, with our daily routines. Wherever you go in the chart, it's all about love. And the chart can also help us to see where are those obstacles to love? Where are there going to be bumps on the road? And why that comes to mind with Venus and Jupiter is because Venus, as well as being a generic Karaka for wives, in some ways it's a generic Karaka for love, right? It's the goddess of love. And if we see that there are challenging aspects to Venus, then we know that these obstacles might play out in this search for where is love in my Vedic Astrology Birth Chart. So some of the things that one might like to have a look at in answering this question, where is the love, is to have a look what's going on with Venus. For example, is it being starved by the moon? And this might be happening if it's in the sign of the moon, if it's in Cancer, or if it's receiving a planetary aspect from Cancer. And if that is the case, then we may find that the moon is starving Venus by making the person feel like all of their problems will be solved if they can have a great romance, if they can meet all of their emotional needs with this great love story. So the moon, when it's starving, over personalizes things, and we put that together with this Karaka of love, and it's like we get completely taken in by the rom-com and the fairy tales, and it feels like the solution to everything is love and is to find a partner. So the moon can starve Venus. That might provide a bump on the road to finding love in the Vedic Astrology Birth Chart. Venus could also be located with Saturn. And even though these two planets are friends, whatever planet Saturn is with, it ends up starving it just from the nature of Saturn and its role in everybody's chart. If we go and have a look at our Lajjitaadi Avasthas periodic table, we're just talking about DNA. This is my love of chemistry, that of course, when I think of Lajjitaadi Avasthas, I think of them as being on the periodic table. So we have a look at Venus being starved by Saturn. Then we see that, yes, a conjunction is required, and that Venus is all about fulfillment in relationships. That's Venus's role, and Saturn is about hard work and lack. And so Saturn, co-located with Venus, can make loving relationships feel like hard work. They need hard work, and maybe they don't feel as fulfilling as one might imagine that they could. And so it could be the case that the person will have a spouse with burdens or it might take away from the person in the chart from their great work. This lack of fulfillment can lead Venus want to escape and indulge in things, and it can drain a person's energy and feel a lack of rejuvenation. So a couple of things to think about when we're looking for where to look for love in the Vedic Astrology Birth Chart is to think about the Lajjitaadi Avasthas and what might be happening with Venus. But of course, that's not all. As well as the chart being full of love, it's full of bumps and obstacles. So there are other Lajjitaadi Avasthas that might get in the way. And we could think maybe about any of these shamed Avasthas, perhaps if they were involving Venus, or if they were involving the seventh lord being shamed, then they might also provide quite significant obstacles. So let's have a look at, for example, if Venus and Mars would be located with a node, for example, and that might create excess passion if it's with Rahu. So that side of the relationship just takes over and is wasting energy that really would be there for being satisfied, but it keeps being spent. Or it might cause the person to internalize their passions and have a secret addiction to porn or a secret relationship with pleasure and sensuality. So as we said, just as the Vedic astrology chart is full of love, it's also full of potential roadblocks as well. And talking about shamed Avasthas reminds us that if the seventh lord is with a node, regardless of whether it's causing shamed or not shamed, just maybe they're just located together, that can also create interesting combinations with your romance, because nodes always, they're like Alice through the looking glass. They turn things in a way that you wouldn't expect. And so it means that your partner might be unexpected, might be strange, might be a foreigner, something unusual. Maybe that's on the Rahu side, and maybe on the Ketu side, maybe a sense of the partner is not as fulfilling, or the partner doesn't feel as fulfilled as they would like to. So we've talked about that it could be a Lajjitaadi Avasthas that is providing a speed bump on the road to finding love. In a Vedic astrology birth chart, it could be being located with a node. Also, we want to think about the Shad-bala. We want to think about the Dig-bala of particularly those feminine planets like Moon and Venus, because the role of Moon and Venus in Shad-bala is to provide emotional fulfillment. And if they are challenged in Dig-bala, because they have a low Dig-bala score, which both the Moon and Venus get high Dig-bala in the 4th house. So if they're on the other side of the chart, over there in the 10th or near there, they might be low in Dig-bala, and just we're not heading in the direction of our emotional fulfillment because we're lacking that. Dig-bala is about the cardinal placements, and it reminds us of a compass, and our compass is just pointing in the wrong direction. And then also the Chesta-bala, which is about the speed the planet is going at. If it's going very fast, if it's Venus, or if it's the Moon, if it's in its waning phase, then we might find that the person doesn't have the confidence to put their emotional fulfillment as a priority. They might step back from that just naturally. That's just not their place to demand that or to expect that. And that can lead them to not reaching out for love. So there are different places in the chart that help us to see where to find love in our Vedic astrology birth chart. And as we wrap up our discussion about where to look for love in the Vedic astrology birth chart, we can turn our mind to a couple of previous episodes here on the Vedic Astrology Podcast back in season 1, when Ernst Wilhelm came and spoke to us generously for a couple of episodes about how to find more love in your life. And in that series on YouTube, he talks about what we've just talked about, that love is the currency, or I don't know, the fiber of living, and it's everywhere. It's an expression of our true self, an expression of pure consciousness. But he works through in these videos some of the beliefs that we may have that are making it difficult for us to flow in that experience of love. And it's very deep program, very confronting in some ways. It's got practical homework to do. And if anybody wants help with their homework, wants someone to read it, feel free to reach out to me. So somewhere that you might like to go is to go check in with Ernst, how to find more love in your life. And it brings us right back to that mythology that we talked about, that it was Parvati really, truly knowing herself. That is what fulfilled her life with love. It was not chasing after someone or humiliating herself in any way. It was truly and authentically knowing her value and her worth and her true identity. So I think it's very inspiring to remember that it is when we truly know ourselves that love can very easily flow in. And I think the story, the mythology is also very beautiful in relaxing our ideas around the Kama houses, like the seventh house is a Kama house, and having that vision of being the goddess, whether we're masculine or feminine in this lifetime, and whether our DNA is in a masculine body or a feminine body. How can we be that goddess that integrates the corporalized desires, that integrates the Kamadeva, so that we are fully alive and whole? And that is my wish for us all here on Valentine's Day. I hope you've enjoyed our exploration of where to look for love in your Vedic Astrology Birth Chart. And I look forward to seeing you the next time that we get together here on the Vedic Astrology Podcast. Okay, bye for now, everyone. Bye.